Something I miss is the Bible laying open on the pulpit, so I can put my notes on top. In the old 200-year-old churches, they have Bibles, great big ones, that they lay open on the pulpit. And they're there, they sometimes will close them through the week and then open them on Sunday. And the pastor will read from that Bible what is on his mind or her mind to speak on, along with other things that are read as part of the service. And when they're finished, most of them will leave it open, and some will use it to put their notes on. Because the notes I have here come from what I read. And so I'm asking God to help me. Paul's writing to Timothy the second time because he longs to see him. He hasn't been with him for some time, over 2 years, I believe. Paul knows that he is near the end of his life, that it won't be long until they come for him and he is taken out and put to death. His second time in prison now is different than his first. His first time in prison in Rome was house arrest. That's like taking a vacation at home without being able to go out beyond your backyard. It's a little inconvenient, but not bad. You have all the comforts around you that you've had all the time you've been there. But his second imprisonment is in a dank, dark cell with chains. And he's got a chain on him to keep him there. He has some books with him. 1 or 2 people visit, but most of his friends have left him, and he longs to have some back. He asks Timothy to come as quickly as he can. He has something important he wants to say. And he longs to see Luke again. Luke has been a real companion to Paul. He's supported him. And now we are at the end of what he's written, and he's closing off. Those verses between the 2 pieces that I read list a whole group of people who have been around Paul, coming to see him from time to time as they were permitted, and those that he's longing to see. And he says now that Luke has found him. He is there with him, only Luke, no one else. He's asking that Timothy would get Mark and bring him with him as well, so he might help him in his ministry. Because Paul is still ministering, although he's locked away in jail. Many of the letters that we have in the New Testament are written by Paul while he was in jail. His ministry went on. What Paul is doing is something that many people will do as they draw near the end of their life. They may know it, or they may not be aware of it. But they are putting things in order. I have seen people doing it. They will do all manner of things. One lady in one of my congregations, it happened to be fall time, and she always canned in the fall, put down all kinds of things. But this year she slaved over her kettles in the kitchen, putting down jar after jar after jar of tomatoes and other things. I mean, there was enough there to feed her husband for years. She was so determined to have enough. She died late in the fall. She knew the end was coming. And I was present as she passed from this life to the next. She was gone before I knew it. It was a wonderful, peaceful death. And it was Thanksgiving Monday. People will do that. Paul was doing that. Paul does something that people will often do near the end of their life. They'll go back and they'll visit things that have gone on. And they will point to a point where I did something to hurt someone, to harm someone, to tell something that wasn't right about them, and I never got it straightened out. They will hunt that person down and ask forgiveness. Timothy says, or Paul says rather, that he has remembered one who he did not forgive. And he has worked it out within himself. He forgives those who fail to visit him. May it not be held against them, he says in his writing. He goes on and he says, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Satisfied that he's done all that he is called to do, Paul is ready to move now to the next life. To go into glory and see all that God has for him. Others are now called to do what Paul has been doing. The reality is to know what it is that God is calling you and I to do. And then to do it to the best of our ability. And without complaint or drawing attention to ourselves. That's hard to do. Then he says, now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day. So confident is Paul that he even says that he is certain that God will give this reward to all who have longed for his appearing. He likens his coming death as the pouring out of a drink offering. All his life has been an effort to pour the water of life out for all to receive and drink as they have listened, that they might have life abundantly and eternally. If nothing else I say to you today sticks with you, let this remain in your mind. To have life, you must have Christ. All else is folly. Life comes through faith in Christ Jesus. It is He who is life. He who is dwelling in you and in your heart. Is He there in your heart today? Paul winds down his letter. Now comes the last thank yous to those who have worked with him, greetings to them, and a warning concerning Alexander the metalworker, who did a great deal of harm to Paul. He warns others to watch out for the man. A classmate of mine, well, latecomer to the ministry like myself, and one whose journey was not as unremarkable as mine, but one who found Christ as he drove down the road to run into a pile of rocks. Because his wife was at home with a small Bible study group, and she'd been with them for some time, talking over for several months at least, and it finally got to him. He stopped, he turned around, he went back, turned his life around and went into ministry. He never had a full-time pastorate. He had a student charge, which was less than remarkable, with, I'm sad to say, a group of individuals who didn't understand the difficulties that he and his family were going through. Muscular dystrophy plagued his youngest son. They had to have a lift to get him from the basement up to the first floor or down to the basement. Grudgingly, the people put it in. When he graduated, he had a charge on Prince Edward Island, West End. One on the Atlantic, one on the Gulf. And it snows like crazy down there in the winter, and you don't want to be caught driving in a storm, especially with a boy in a wheelchair. But he had to do his services every week anyway. Now, they knew of his difficulties and the problems they had with the child. And yes, we'll put an elevator in, no problem. Now they put it in coming up into the living room, and it was a small window, and Rick asked if you could make it a larger window, it would be nice. Yeah, we can do that too. So they did it. Now this was a small window that came to here, and a big window that came down to there. The curtains came to here on the small window, the curtains came to there on the big window. They took the curtains down when they were finished putting the new window in, they put the curtains back up. They were a little short. But that's all, right? Needless to say, he left and spent a couple of years supplying for another denomination on time to time. And then he did get a call. He got called to a charge in Northern Ontario. We spent 95 years on church assistance. You know that money that you get from the church on mission extension? 95 years. He left there because he was trying to start 2 more congregations in the area, which he could have handled and would support themselves, but they didn't want anything to do with it. He left. Disillusioned again. Then he got a full-time charge, and he was happy. I visited him in November. He was happy. He was talking about what he'd do when he retired. A former Navy man, he was going to give himself a retired Navy vessel and convert it to a passenger ship and sail from Montreal to Halifax and then charge to come back the other way for another trip. Trips back and forth, one way. That was November. In March, I preached his funeral. His last sermon to his congregation came the Sunday before, and on Thursday morning, his day off, he got up and he said to his wife, "I don't feel very good." And down he went into bed, and within an hour and a half, he was dead, and there was nothing they could do. His heart gave out. Rick always said, "I will not live to be old." Heart problems were a thing in his family. His people realized after this funeral that Rick had been talking to them about the Lord and what the Lord meant to him and meant to them, and that was his last sermon to them. They figured it out after he was gone. His son spoke for 15 minutes at that service, a eulogy, 15 minutes long. It wasn't a eulogy, it was a sermon. He did his Lord better than I did. But he talked about his father and his father's influence in his life. And he became a witness to everyone gathered, including the whole presbytery, of which I had been a part at one point. What is your witness to those? What kind of a witness will you leave when you leave this life? What kind of a witness will I leave? All I know is I try to do the best I can. What impact I have, I do not know. I don't really need to know.